The topic of today is cryptocurrency within the context of money laundering and financing of terrorism, which is quite broad to cover in 45 minutes. So I will touch a bit about everything, but I wanted the possibility to go into detail about some issues. So if you have questions at the end, go ahead, write in the chat. I'm also going to put my email address if you have afterthoughts or comments or questions. Don't hesitate to contact me. I will try to answer to you to the best of my ability. So today, I'm going to talk about what are cryptocurrencies. I don't have any backgrounds in computer science, so I won't go into detail about the technological aspects of the blockchain and cryptocurrencies, but I'm going to try to explain to you what are cryptocurrencies, what you can do with them, where they come from, and why do criminals use that. Why is it advantageous for them to use cryptocurrencies instead of fiat currency? Due to the fact that it's a global problem, or not a problem, but it's a global issue, we need a global regulation. Even just national regulation regarding cryptocurrencies and cryptocurrencies exchange platform isn't really relevant today, as Bitcoin isn't stuck in France or in Germany. It's a global issue, so we need to have supranational entities promoting regulation and recommendations such as the FATF or the EU Commission. After that, I'm going to touch a bit about different money laundering techniques, the most used at the moment, based on the findings of Europol. There are others, of course, but I'm going to present the most famous ones. And I'm going to talk a bit about the future risks that the cryptocurrencies can bring, and the solution that we found in Belgium and in Europe to mitigate these risks, including prevention and sensibilization of the public. With cryptocurrencies, there is a whole new vocabulary which arrives. You've heard about Bitcoin, blockchain, cryptocurrency, virtual asset, virtual currency. Today I'm going to talk about cryptocurrency, which is going to englobe a bit everything. There is no proper definition of what is a cryptocurrency. Everybody has its own. But we cannot talk about cryptocurrency without talking about Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is the first cryptocurrency which was created in 2009 by Satoshi Nakamoto. Satoshi Nakamoto is an unknown individual or group of individuals who created Bitcoin right after the financial crisis of 2008. There was a huge distrust in the ability of the states to control the money, and huge distrust in classical financial actors such as banks, credit institutions. And what Satoshi Nakamoto brought was the possibility to get rid of these intermediaries. So Bitcoin is based on an ideology which is the libertarian ideology, which promotes money without states, without any intermediaries. Everybody can participate, and you don't need to rely on an intermediary to conduct your transaction or to store your cryptocurrency. It defines a state due to the fact that there is no central organ, so no supervision, and it's quite transparent. Bitcoin is based on a new technology which is called the blockchain, and this blockchain is accessible to anybody. The blockchain is a distributed ledger technology. To put it simply, it's kind of a storage of all the transactions which occurred with Bitcoin since the beginning of Bitcoin. And anybody can access that. So it's quite transparent. I mean, you can come back to 2009 from the first transaction which occurred in Bitcoin to the latest. If today I want to send 1 Bitcoin to Armin, you will be able to see this transaction on the blockchain. It will be updated right after I conduct the transaction, and everybody will be able to see it. What you won't be able to see, however, is that it's me who sends 1 Bitcoin to Armin. It's going to be anonymous. You're going to see a list of letters and numbers, which is my Bitcoin address and Armin Bitcoin's address. But if you don't know who's behind it, you won't be able to identify it. To a certain extent, I think that today we're going to talk about the Titanium project, which enables you to go a bit further and try to identify the persons behind these addresses. But for classical persons, it's quite difficult. So I put transparent between brackets, but it is quite transparent. Of course, Bitcoin isn't the only cryptocurrency which exists. You have thousands of them, and you have new ones arriving every day. you might have heard of the Litecoin, Ethereum, Monero, Dash. Each of these cryptocurrencies have their own characteristics. For example, Ethereum is way more scalable than Bitcoin. Monero is way more anonymous. Their blockchain is not transparent, so you cannot follow the money that easily. But what all these cryptocurrencies have in common is that there is no central organ, so no intermediary, and they're based on the blockchain. And that's due to the fact that there is no central organ, they're not supervised, and there is no central bank controlling that money. If you take a look at what is a cryptocurrency, I took two definitions, the definition of the Financial Action Task Force and the definition of the European Commission. What you can point out is that they use a different terminology. FATF use virtual assets and the EU virtual currency, but in essence, it's a cryptocurrency. They just use different words with small different meaning, but it's the same. What we can point out from this definition is that cryptocurrencies are digital by nature. You won't have any banknotes or coin related to this cryptocurrency. It's going to be all digital. You can store them on your wallets or Bitcoin addresses. And these cryptocurrencies can be traded, transferred, can be used as investments, they can be used as payment, as a means of exchange. But they differ from fiat currency due to the fact that it's not guaranteed by any central bank and it's not regulated by any central authority. So what can you do with these kind of cryptocurrencies? You can buy goods if you find someone who accepts your crypto as a means of payments. If you're a seller, an online retailer, or if you have a shop, you can accept cryptocurrencies as payment too. You can invest. The cryptocurrency market is quite volatile due to the fact that there is no central organ controlling the exchange appearing between cryptocurrencies. Today, Bitcoin might be worth 8,000 euros and tomorrow 9,000. So you can try to invest. It's a risky investment. You can lose a lot of money and win a lot of money. And of course, you can trade and transfer your cryptocurrency. That's why it is really interesting for criminals and terrorists due to the fact that this transfer cannot be cancelled or you cannot freeze. In the example of Bitcoin, a Bitcoin address, you cannot cancel a transfer if you're a criminal using cryptocurrencies and you have a Colombian supplier. I can pay him using crypto from Belgium and no one can stop me from doing that. It provides you also with anonymity or pseudonymity regarding which cryptocurrency you're using. Pseudonymity in the case of Bitcoin, anonymity in the case of Monero. And at the end of the day, what you're going to have are cryptocurrencies, but as they're not widely accepted as means of exchange, you're going to need to go to cryptocurrency exchange platforms, which are entity enabling you to find a buyer or a seller if you want to buy or sell cryptocurrency against fiat money. You want to cash it out to be able to buy a car, a house, as no one or almost no one will accept cryptocurrency as payment for such goods. So it's quite advantageous for criminals because it's difficult to seize, difficult to trace, even if it's possible in some cases. It can be traded and transfer almost instantly around the globe, or in a few minutes without being clear that your transfer is cancelled or that your funds are freeze. If you want to do an international transfer between Belgium and Colombia, it's going to take a few days. They're going to do some checks about you. They're going to ask you about your ID, where the money comes from, etc. That doesn't happen in the cryptocurrency world if you stay outside of cryptocurrency exchange platforms. It's an evolving technology, and people around the cryptocurrency world are trying to make them more efficient, faster, cheaper, and more anonymous, which is an advantage for criminals and terrorists if they want to use it, because at the moment there is a big lack of supervision of the actors of this sector, even though it's changing. But due to the fact that it's evolving all the time, the legislation cannot really cope with this evolving technology, at least at the moment. So as it is a global phenomenon, as I said, it's not stuck to one jurisdiction. You need to have a global legislation, or at least some rules which can be applied everywhere in the world, or at least regionally. And that's what the EU tried to do with the 5th AML directive, or the 4th AML directive amended. And what the Financial Action Task Force tried to do by amending its recommendation to include virtual asset service providers, meaning every cryptocurrency entities enabling you to exchange cryptocurrencies and store them. AMLD5, so the 5th AML directive, was published in June 2018 by the EU Commission with the deadline to be transposed into national law in January 2020. We talked about it yesterday, but what's interesting regarding crypto is that it's based on the European Commission Action Plan of 2016. And if you take a look at this action plan, what the EU Commission wanted, it was to mitigate the risk and tackle terrorism financing linked to virtual currencies. How did they want to do that? The Commission says that it proposed to bring virtual currency exchange platform under the scope of the Anti-Money Laundering Directive. So that was the idea in the action plan. The AMLD5, the 5th AML directive, brought many changes, such as the obligation to have a UBO registry, the fact that there should be a central bank account registry in every member state. It enhanced the power of FIU, and it limits the anonymity related to virtual currencies and wallet providers and prepaid cards, but that's not an issue. And how did they do that? They did that by putting the virtual currency exchange platforms under the definition of obliged entity under AML law. So before, these entities, where you could go to buy or sell cryptocurrencies, had no obligation to identify their clients. They didn't have to conduct any customer due diligence. They didn't have to analyze the origin of your funds. They didn't ask any questions to you regarding any documents such as invoice, which could justify the transfer you were doing. Even if they found suspicious transaction, it was quite difficult for them, or even impossible, to give this information to the FIUs. They only had to collaborate with law enforcement. And in many cases, it wasn't the case. So it was possible at that time to go there and register as Mickey Mouse and exchange €1 million worth of Bitcoin and cash out. They didn't have any obligation to ask you for more information in that case. But now that they fall under the side of obliged entity, they are regulated. So they have to conduct a KYC and know your customer. They have to identify the clients. They have to ask you about a copy of your ID, where you live, what is your national registry number, etc. And they have to analyze the transaction that you're conducting. If they find something suspicious about you, which could be related to money laundering or terrorism financing, they have to spontaneously fill suspicious activity reports to the FIU of their jurisdiction. And if they receive a request from the FIU, they have to answer that. The more I speak with Exchange, the more I feel, and this is what I hear the most, is that the Exchange welcome this kind of regulation because now they can say that they are regulated, they comply with the law, and they can be trusted by their customer. They can be differentiated from illegal exchange, and these exchange with in good faith promoting this kind of regulation. It's also good for customers because they're going to be more protected, and there will be less risk of scams. They can be able to trust a bit more the exchange that they use in their jurisdiction. And of course, for law enforcement and FIUs, they're going to be able to rely on these exchange to get information and suspicious activity reports, which was information which were out of their reach in the past. They're going to be able to ask them about more information and to exchange with them regarding typologies or new trends arriving in this sector. Of course, this directive isn't perfect. As I said, it's based on an action plan which dates back to 2016, which followed the terrorist attack of 2015, and it's 4 years ago for a sector whose only 11 years old. 4 years is a big time frame, and the sector has changed. Directive is good, but it should go further. I mean, it's based on a plan of 2016, and then it was published in June 2018. The deadline is now, but many countries so far haven't transposed the law into national law yet. One of the limitations of the directive is that it only limits the exchange between cryptocurrencies and fiat currency, meaning that if you have Bitcoin, for example, if you go to one of these exchanges, you want to exchange this Bitcoin against Litecoin without going to euros or dollar or yen, you don't need to be identified. You will probably if you go to a regular exchange, but it's not mandatory. And there is no obligation to fill any suspicious activity reports regarding these kind of counters from these entities. So at the moment, I think the EU Commission wants to go further. They began an action, public consultation at the end of 2019, which ended in March. And we are still waiting for the results of this public consultation, but I think it's necessary, and it's quite likely that we're going to see a more harmonized and a deeper regulation regarding these kind of cryptocurrency exchange and these kind of activities in the future. The EU isn't the only one to move and to think about regulating cryptocurrency at a bigger level than national level. The Financial Action Task Force also modified its recommendation to include cryptocurrencies. The FATF is a national body based in Paris with mostly Western member states, which comprise its members, but it has subgroups in Asia, Eastern Europe, Africa, South America. So it's active at a global level. The recommendation that the FATF gives are not binding, but if you do not comply with them, every couple of years it's going to be assessed and revised by the FATF. And if you have a negative review, it can be quite bad for your financial sector. And if you have a very negative review, you can even be blacklisted and put aside of the globally financial sector, such as happened with Iran. So the FATF aims to implement global recommendations regarding anti-money laundering and counter-terrorism financing in the world, and it reports to G20. FATF has been looking at cryptocurrencies since 2015, if I'm not mistaken, but at the end of 2018, the finance ministries of the G20 asked the FATF to take a closer look at the regulation of cryptocurrencies and actors around it. And they did. In 2019, they modified the recommendation, and there was a lot of discussion about it, but they went a bit further than the EU Commission regarding what they recommend regarding the implementation and the regulation of cryptocurrency exchange platforms. It's due to the fact that these recommendations were written in 2019 and are based on findings of 2018, which is a bit more relevant than the action plan of the EU Commission from 2016. What did they decide? They decide to amend the recommendation to include virtual asset service providers, also called VASPs, meaning every crypto service enabling you to transfer or store cryptocurrencies, including cryptocurrency exchange platform doing exchange between crypto and crypto, so between Litecoin and Bitcoin, for example. So it goes a bit further than the EU Commission, and these entities have to collect information about their clients and their customers. They have to conduct procedures, KYC, CDD. They have to have blacklist about high-risk countries. They have to have a list of politically exposed persons that they can identify, etc. And the FATF placed a very low threshold of 1,000 euros or dollar, depending on which jurisdiction, for CDD and KYC. So for each transaction, which can be occasional, you need to identify these persons as from the moment they use at least 1,000 euros. It can be even lower in case of high-risk transaction, for example, for Bitcoin ATMs. And they also implement the wire transfer rule, which is a quite criticized rule, which is based on the classical financial sector. For example, if you want to do a transfer between two international banks, for example, between Belgium and the US, the bank has to provide the name of the sender, the address of the sender, the bank account of the sender, and it has to have the name of the beneficiary and the bank account of the beneficiary. And they exchange this information using the SWIFT protocol. What the FATF wanted to do is to implement these rules in the crypto world. So for an exchange platform, it's quite easy to identify their customers, who are there, where they live, what is their date of birth, etc. What is the bank accounts or their crypto address. However, it's difficult to identify the beneficiary due to the technical difficulties that the crypto world brings to that. So the FATF had a good idea, but they didn't really explain how to put into place this wire transfer rule, which is, from my point of view, quite practically impossible to put into place. But I've heard that it was possible in some cases, and the FATF knew that it would be quite difficult to put that into place. And last year, they decided to have a one-year review. So it's going to be next month in June at the plenary of the FATF. They're going to discuss about these new recommendations to see if they're good or if they should be modified. And we're going to wait the results of this discussion to see if they're going to modify it or not. Of course, if you have regulation, criminals are going to evolve. They're going to use various techniques to be able to obfuscate the origin and destination of their funds. In the past, it was quite easy for them. If you had cryptocurrency that you gathered selling the drugs on the dark web, you could just go to an exchange, register as Donald Trump, and exchange your Bitcoin against euro and cash it out. It was quite easy. Nowadays, these exchanges are going to ask you about your ID, where the money comes from, etc. So it's not that easy anymore. What you could do, and what you can still do, but it's more difficult, is go to an online casino accepting cryptocurrencies as payment. You go on there, you gamble a bit, you cash it out, you see that the crypto that you own come from gambling. But these entities are being also regulated, and there have been some crackdowns, so it's more difficult just to go there and people usually will ask you a few questions about the origin of your funds. An old school technique was the use of mixer, but still widely used at the moment. A mixer enables you to mix, as its name goes, your cryptocurrencies illegally obtained with other cryptocurrencies. Imagine that I have cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, for example, that I own selling drugs. I can mix it with many, many other Bitcoins and take some Bitcoin out. And if a law enforcement authority wants to ask me about the origin of this fund, they won't be able to go through the mixer because they won't be able to know where the Bitcoin really comes from. At the beginning, mixers were quite basics, and you have now demixing tool, which enables you to still follow the money, but they're getting technologically a bit more evolved at the moment. So people are still using it, but it's more difficult to use a proper mixer. What we see at the moment developing lately is the use of swap. Swap, such as a mixer, enables you to obfuscate the origin of your funds, but instead of mixing your cryptocurrency with others and taking it out, it enables you to change from one cryptocurrency to another without anyone noticing it. So if I have illegally obtained Bitcoin, I can swap it against Litecoin, for example. And from my Litecoin, no one will know that it comes from my previous Bitcoin illegally obtained. So it's also interesting for criminals to use. However, the fees are quite high, and you can do that for a large amount of cryptocurrency where it's used. Another possibility for criminals to launder their money is the use of Bitcoin to plastic, which are credit cards, such as Visa, MasterCard, which are directly linked to your Bitcoin address. meaning that if I use this kind of visa in a local shop, I will be able to pay, and the local shop will never know that the funds I use to pay for my groceries come from Bitcoin. At the moment I want to pay, there will be an instant exchange of my Bitcoin against euro or dollar, depending on where you are, and you will be able to pay for any goods using these kind of cards. It's now evolving, and with Bitcoin to Plastic 2.0, it's the same way of working, except that it's not only limited to Bitcoin anymore. You can do that with other cryptocurrencies, which are more anonymous or more difficult to trace. Another perspective for criminals is the use of ICO to launder money and to integrate their illegally obtained cryptocurrencies into a real project or real companies without having to go through an exchange. ICOs stands for Initial Coin Offering, which is derived from IPO, Initial Public Offering. It's a possibility for you, if you have a project and you need funds, to put your project online. You're going to write a paper about it, a so-called white paper. You're going to present your team, what you want to do, and you're going to say, I need 100,000 euros to launch my project. And you're going to try to attract investors who are going to bring you cryptocurrencies to finance your project. And if it works, they're going to have a return on investment in this project. It can be shares. Most of the time, if you create an ICO, you create a new cryptocurrency, and they're going to get it. It's not regulated, so you have a lot of fake ICO, a lot of projects which are never launched, and you can lose your money. But for a criminal who doesn't want to go through an exchange or doesn't want to cash it out, investing in ICO is a good way of directly investing your illegally obtained cryptocurrency into a real project and even make a return on investment on this project. And the last future trends which can happen, it's like a risk that we've been seeing the last 2-3 years, is a decentralized exchange platform. It works as classical exchange platforms. We have buyers and sellers of cryptocurrencies, but there is no intermediary. It's like a pure software, just pure coding, which enables you to exchange your Bitcoin against a euro or Litecoin, and there is no one behind it. That's very interesting for criminals because no one will going to ask you about your ID, the origin of your funds, and if you manage to exchange cryptocurrency there, even if the law enforcement agency know that you did that there, they won't be able to contact anyone as there is no one behind this kind of exchange. It's quite theoretical, as at the moment I haven't seen any decentralized exchange existing. There will always be someone behind it because you don't do that for free, so you want to get some fees about what you do. And you can always identify someone who's behind decentralized cryptocurrency exchange. But it's a possibility, and it can bring a lot of risks for related to money laundering in the crypto world if that happens. So these are the kind of latest money laundering trends that I've been seeing at the moment. But there are other risks which are not totally related to money laundering, but which are identified. And the biggest risk for me is a wide adoption of cryptocurrencies, which could happen, for example, if Facebook launches its Libra. It's possible that people will gonna use cryptocurrencies every day, and that a lot of retailers, shops, and companies will accept cryptocurrencies as payment. If that happens, it's going to mean that criminals and terrorists won't have to go through cryptocurrency exchange platform in order to exchange their crypto against fiat money or other crypto. They will be able to use it directly and purchase goods using their crypto. That's a big risk. If that happens, that means that the legislation that we have at the moment at EU level, but even the recommendation of the FATF will be a bit pointless due to the fact that no one will use this exchange, or at least not a lot of people. If there is a continuous lack of expertise for national security actors, it's a big risk for me. I mean, it is the case at the moment. It's the case for law enforcement, so police forces, FIUs, intelligence services, supervisors, market authorities. You don't have at the moment a lot of people who know what is cryptocurrencies and how they work, how they should be regulated. I think that many agencies at the moment are pushing to educate their members. But if it stays as it is now in the future, I think it's a big risk because criminals and terrorists are going to benefit from this gap of knowledge regarding cryptocurrencies. We talked about it, but if there's a continuous lack of global legislation regarding cryptocurrencies, it's going to be beneficial for criminals due to the fact that it's a global issue. You cannot do that at the national level. But I think that FATF is trying to push towards such a global regulation. Of course, if there is a wide adoption of cryptocurrencies, there could be an adoption of anonymous cryptocurrency. At the moment, most of the people and even criminals use Bitcoin to move their funds around the crypto world, but if they begin to use other cryptocurrencies such as Monero, it's going to be more and more difficult for law enforcement agencies to follow their trace and to identify them. And of course, the latest risk is the adoption of this technology by terrorist groups. There have been some attempts the last few years to gather funds using cryptocurrencies. The Hamas, the Hezbollah, the Al-Qassam brigades, Daesh tried to gather funds without any very good results so far. But it shows that these terrorist groups are getting more and more interested in this kind of technology to be able to finance themselves and to gather funds for their fights. Lately, there was a huge discussion regarding the terrorist attack of last Easter in Sri Lanka and the possibility that it could have been financed using crypto. I haven't seen proper evidence in this regard, but it's possible that it's the first terrorist attack which was really financed only using crypto, or at least a big part of it. So it shows that terrorist groups are evolving with the technology and that they're going to use cryptocurrencies in the future. So we need to be prepared to be able to tackle this risk and to be able to identify them before they conduct any terrorist attack on our soil. I have some ideas and solutions that we need in order to mitigate these risks. Of course, we need legislative changes. It's beginning with AML5 and the FATF recommendation, but we need to have an adaptive legislation which can cope with the technology. So I think that the EU understood that and is going to go further than what they brought so far. But a good legislation is a bit pointless if your supervisory authorities don't know how to enforce it. So you need to have education and experts at your national banks, at the market authority, so they can conduct research and inspection and know what are the risks that you bear in your country. As I said, you need education program for national authorities. It can be from the judiciary, for the police force, for the FIUs. At the moment, if I send reports to the judiciary in Belgium and I talk to prosecutors, they don't know what Bitcoin is, they don't know what cryptocurrency is. They're going to use me, ask me, yeah, okay, and you put that on a USB stick. It's going to be quite difficult for them to apprehend such case if they don't have a background knowledge about cryptocurrencies at first. We also need prevention campaigns to protect our citizens because the cryptocurrency world is quite risky, especially regarding investments. So we need people to be aware of these risks, that they don't have to go there without any knowledge. And of course, we cannot do anything by ourselves, so we need international cooperation and exchange of good practices between countries. Of course, for Belgium, we are a small country, so we need that. It's the same for the US, France, for Germany. We need to be all together and exchange the typology that we discover. We need to work together in this field. So some of these ideas and solutions have already been put into place in Belgium. For example, we had some legislative adaptation regarding the confiscation of cryptocurrencies. We launched a prevention program directed at Belgian customers regarding cryptocurrency, which is called Too Beautiful to Be True. We have various memorandum of understanding with foreign countries. I usually exchange views with Europol and with other FIUs, or law enforcement agency, regarding typologies that you can find in the crypto sector. We put into place a cyber task force in Belgium and the police forces, which invites the market authority, the National Pension Bank, and some members of our FAU to discuss cryptocurrencies issues. So we need to continue going there and putting new ideas into place. We don't have to stop now. I think it's possible to have a proper and beautiful legislation which enables us to mitigate the risks which are brought by cryptocurrencies, but we need to continue, and certainly we could be there, I think. I tried to be quick. I know that I speak very fast, and I couldn't go into details on many points. So if you have any questions, go ahead. And if you don't think about it, you can also send me an email afterwards. It's there. Thank you very much for listening to me. I think that's it.